Most people know Oprah Winfrey owns a mansion in California. However, far fewer know that the mansion is only one part of something much larger. A real estate portfolio built over 4 decades, spanning California, Hawaii, Colorado, and beyond, estimated at well over $100 million. It did not happen all at once. It happened slowly, deal by deal, decade by decade, almost always quietly, almost never with a press conference. Over the years, Oprah Winfrey quietly bought so much land that some people stopped asking what she owned and started asking why she kept buying more. The strange part isn't that Oprah bought expensive property. Plenty of celebrities do that. The strange part is that she kept buying the land next door. This is the story of how Oprah Winfrey quietly built one of the largest celebrity property empires in America, and why she never seemed to stop. From Mississippi to her first property. Oprah Winfrey was born in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, on January 29, 1954, to a teenage mother. She spent her first 6 years living with her grandmother on a rural farm, in what has been documented repeatedly as genuine poverty, at times wearing dresses made from potato sacks, by her own account. She moved between her mother in Milwaukee and her father in Nashville through her childhood, eventually landing her first job in radio while still in high school, after winning a local beauty contest in 1971 that led to a station visit and an on-air reading. By 1976, she was a news anchor in Baltimore. By 1984, she had taken over a struggling Chicago morning show, AM Chicago, and turned it into the highest-rated program in the city within months. By 1986, The Oprah Winfrey Show was syndicated nationally.
Today on AM Chicago, we'll see how embryo transplant works from the California doctor who supervised the first one.
Police are still attempting to identify the body of a young man who was found stabbed to death in Aces.
Her first real estate purchase came in 1985. A condominium in Chicago's Water Tower Place. Over the next several years, she bought the units adjoining it, eventually combining them into one large home. In 1988, while her show was becoming a national phenomenon, she purchased a 164-acre property in Rolling Prairie, Indiana, a weekend retreat with a main residence, guest house, orchard, and stables. That purchase is worth noting, because it marks the first time Winfrey bought significant acreage rather than simply a larger home. Looking back, it was the first clue that Oprah wasn't simply buying homes. She was building something much bigger. But the property that truly changed everything wouldn't come until 2001. The Montecito estate that became her base. In 2001, Winfrey purchased a 42-acre estate in Montecito, California, for an estimated $50 million. The seller was unwilling at first. By her own account, she fell in love with the property after attending a party there and persuaded the owners, Robert and Marlene Velaz, to sell. She named it the Promised Land. It included a 23,000-square-foot main house, a 6,000-square-foot redwood guest house, a tennis court, a pool, and terraced gardens. At the time, it was reported as one of the highest prices ever paid for a private home in California. What happened next is the part of the story most people miss. Most celebrities buy a dream home and stop there. Winfrey kept buying the land around it. In 2015, she purchased Seamare Farm, a 23-acre equestrian estate designed by architect Cliff May, for approximately $28.8 million, adding stables, riding tracks, and orchards to her existing footprint. That same year, she added a separate 44-acre crop and equestrian parcel. In 2019, she bought a 4-acre Spanish Revival compound from actor Jeff Bridges and his wife Susan Geston for roughly $6.85 million, a property that had been damaged in the 2017 Montecito mudslides and remodeled by the Bridges family before the sale. By the end of that purchase, her contiguous Montecito holdings had reached 70 acres. Most people never realized Oprah's estate had grown that large, And Montecito wasn't even the biggest surprise. By now, it wasn't just a mansion. It was becoming something much larger. The question was, what exactly was Oprah building? By now, Oprah wasn't collecting homes anymore. She was expanding territory. The question was, how far would it go? Then Oprah took the same strategy somewhere even bigger. Why she kept buying the land next door. The Montecito expansion was not random. It followed a specific, recognizable logic that real estate analysts who have studied ultra-wealthy property buying describe often: contiguous acquisition. When a wealthy buyer already owns a large property, the single most effective way to guarantee long-term privacy and control is not a higher fence. It is owning the land that borders your own. Each time a neighboring parcel near the promised land came up for sale, Winfrey was positioned to buy it, sometimes through direct negotiation, sometimes in deals that were never widely publicized at the time they closed. This is not unusual behavior for billionaires who value privacy. It is, however, unusually well documented in Winfrey's case, because journalists and real estate outlets have tracked her Montecito purchases parcel by parcel for over 2 decades. The Jeff Bridges purchase in particular illustrates the pattern clearly. A neighboring 4-acre property, bought specifically because of its proximity to her existing estate, expanding her contiguous footprint rather than adding a separate, disconnected holding elsewhere. By 2019, the promised land was no longer simply a large estate. It had become a buffer zone, built parcel by parcel, around the place she calls home. Then the same pattern appeared somewhere even bigger. Hawaii. The pattern repeats at an even larger scale. In 2003, Winfrey purchased 2 parcels of land on Maui, totaling roughly 24 acres for approximately $5.3 million, including a modest gray farmhouse that she would spend years renovating with designer Ellie Coleman and architectural designer Jeff Woolley. Over the following 2 decades, that 24 acres grew. By the early 2020s, her Maui holdings had expanded to approximately 163 acres, reportedly through a combined investment of around $40 to $60 million in additional land. Then, in 2023, the scale of the expansion changed entirely. Winfrey acquired an additional 870 acres of agricultural land in Kula, in Maui's upcountry region, across 4 separate parcels purchased from the Ulupalakua Ranch for approximately $6.6 million. That single set of acquisitions brought her total Maui holdings to roughly 1,000 acres. To put that into perspective, Oprah wasn't simply buying a large property anymore. She was acquiring land on a scale normally associated with working ranches, not vacation homes. And that was the moment the story stopped looking like celebrity real estate and started looking like something else entirely. Because very few celebrities buy 1,000 acres. Even among billionaires, that number stands out. By this point, it no longer looked like a vacation property being expanded for comfort. It looked like a long-term land strategy. Agricultural acreage acquired at a scale far beyond what any single residence would require. In 2010, she had already been granted permission by the Maui County Council to operate a bed and breakfast on part of the property. And over the years, the land has been used to grow fruit, vegetables, and flowers, consistent with active agricultural use rather than land banked purely for privacy. After the devastating Lahaina wildfires in August 2023, Winfrey partnered with Dwayne Johnson to launch the People's Fund of Maui, directing money raised by both of them directly to displaced residents. A response that drew on her deep, decades-long presence on the island rather than a one-time celebrity gesture. And that's when people finally started paying attention to the scale of it all. The quiet way these deals get done. A recurring detail across nearly every major Winfrey property acquisition is how little publicity surrounded it at the time. The Jeff Bridges purchase, the farmhouse later sold to Jennifer Aniston, several of the Maui parcels. These were reported afterward by real estate trade publications. often based on county records rather than any announcement from Winfrey herself.
The opportunity to have done this work, to be embraced by all of you who watched, is one of the greatest honors any human being could have.
There is nothing in the public record suggesting anything improper about it. What is unusual is simply the scale and the consistency. The same quiet pattern, repeating across multiple states for decades. Why people started paying attention. For years, these purchases happened quietly. Then the numbers became impossible to ignore. As the scale of Winfrey's holdings became more widely reported, particularly after the 2023 Maui expansion, online discussion of her property empire increased substantially. Real estate publications began running detailed breakdowns of her full portfolio. Entertainment outlets started referring to her, not entirely jokingly, as one of America's biggest individual landowners outside of traditional agriculture and energy. The fascination is understandable. Most public figures buy 1 or 2 homes and stop. Winfrey's pattern, buy, expand, occasionally sell, then expand again somewhere else, is genuinely unusual, even among billionaires. It raised an obvious question that a lot of people started asking online and in entertainment press. What exactly is she building toward? That question deserves a real answer, not a speculative one. What the properties actually reveal. Because by this point, the pattern was impossible to miss. Different states, different decades, different types of land. Yet somehow the same strategy kept appearing. After nearly 40 years of purchases, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. The pattern never changes. After following the trail for nearly 4 decades, a pattern finally emerges. There is no public record proving exactly why Winfrey buys the way she does. What exists is a pattern and a set of public statements that may help explain it. Winfrey has spoken publicly, across many interviews over the decades, about the value she places on privacy and on control over her own environment. Property analysts who study ultra-high net worth buyers frequently point to a specific motive behind contiguous land acquisition: physical security and long-term control over what happens on neighboring land, rather than depending on a future buyer's goodwill. One possible explanation fits her documented history. Someone who spent the first 6 years of her life in rural poverty, who was raised across 3 different households by the time she was a teenager, who then spent 25 years as one of the most photographed people in America, may simply place an unusually high value on controlling her own surroundings. That is consistent with what she has said in interviews. It is not something the public record can fully confirm. Another possibility, often raised by real estate commentators, is simpler. Owning the land next door reduces the chance that a future neighbor changes the character of the property she already has. In Hawaii, the pattern looks somewhat different. The agricultural land is actively farmed. The bed and breakfast is operated under a permit from Maui County. The relief work after the 2023 wildfires came from someone with a documented decades-long presence on the island. Whatever the underlying reason for the scale of the purchases, the use of the land itself is publicly verifiable. Long-term thinking about land is something that holds value regardless of what happens to any single career. Property experts who study patterns like this would call that a reasonable common motivation for a buyer in her position. The more land she acquired, the less dependent she became on circumstances she couldn't control. Nothing here can be stated as confirmed fact about her personal reasoning, only as a pattern consistent with values she has spoken about publicly. The full story, brought together. When you step back and look at the entire timeline, a very different picture emerges. Start with a child in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, with no stability and no control over where she lived or who raised her. Add 3 decades of relentless career building: radio, local news, A failing Chicago morning show turned into the highest-rated program in America, a media empire built from that single platform.
My favorite!
You have talked to them one-on-one. I don't care what the story is.
Taking anything to change the color of your skin?
Oh, God, no.
You did not purposely?
We're trying to control it and using makeup.
Add a billion-dollar fortune, built almost entirely from her own production company, rather than inherited wealth or outside investment. And then add 4 decades of real estate decisions that follow one consistent thread. Buy land, expand the footprint, secure the perimeter. Repeat, first in Chicago, then Indiana, then California, then Hawaii, then Colorado. None of those decisions individually look unusual for someone at her level of wealth. Together, traced across 40 years, they describe a person who decided, a long time ago, exactly what kind of life she wanted to build, and then spent every available resource building it. Why the purchases never seem to stop. The internet loves a mystery, but the real story here may be simpler than the online speculation suggests. Oprah Winfrey spent her childhood with almost no control over her own circumstances. Where she lived, who raised her, what she wore, what she had access to. Today she owns enough land, in enough places, that no single neighbor, buyer, or circumstance could put her back in that position. One possible explanation is privacy. Another is long-term financial strategy. A third, often raised by people who study wealthy landowners, is that land at this scale simply holds its value regardless of what happens to any single career. The public record cannot settle which explanation is correct, or whether it is some combination of the three. What it can confirm is the pattern itself. 4 decades of parcel-by-parcel acquisition, repeated across multiple states, that never seems to stop. Because the properties were never just an investment. They are the physical record of everything she spent her life building, measured not in acres, but in distance from where she started. And maybe that is the real answer. The properties were never just about land. They were about creating a life where nobody else got to decide the boundaries. And perhaps that is the real story behind every acre Oprah Winfrey ever bought. So here is the question we want you to answer. If you had Oprah's wealth, would you keep buying land the way she has, or would you invest in something else entirely? Let us know your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more upcoming videos just like this one.